It's hard to believe that I've been around for nearly 6 decades. And for over 4 of them, I have been working, I've been leading, and I've been growing. I've learned a thing or two along the way. You want to know one of the biggest lessons I've discovered? After years of climbing the corporate ladder, leading my family, managing teams, and striving for success, I needed a hard reset. So for nearly 40 days, 38 to be exact, I unplugged. I stepped back, I reconnected with my purpose, and I reimagined what life and leadership could actually look like for the remainder of my time as a leader. The time of unplugging sparked this very important conversation, one that I want to have with you. I'm Kelley Cornish, and this is Life and Leadership Unplugged. Let's dive in. Before we dive in, I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Tonya Ladipo. Tonya is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder and the CEO of the Ladipo Group, with over 25 years of experience partnering with mission-driven organizations to enhance emotional intelligence and create psychologically safe workplaces. Her philosophy, knowledge is good, behavior is better, underpins her approach to fostering lasting behavior change. As a dynamic speaker on workplace wellness, emotional intelligence, and psychological safety, Tonya has inspired audiences ranging from intimate gatherings to over 1,000 attendees, with notable engagements at Google, Black Enterprise, and Villanova University. Her work has been featured in major outlets like the New York Times, NPR, and Essence, and she has received accolades such as Titan 100, Philadelphia Business Journal's Diversity in Business, and the Power Award. Delving into Tonya's personal strategies for maintaining balance, building healthy routines, and setting boundaries, all critical elements that empower her to lead authentically and sustainably. So hello and welcome to another edition of Life and Leadership Unplugged. And, this episode is part 2 of a conversation that I've had with Tonya Ladipo of the Ladipo Group. And I am excited because now I get to talk to her and about her life, about her role, and literally the change that she brings every day. And also, we'll just jump into this unplugging conversation as well. But welcome to the show, Tonya.
Thank you, Kelley. I'm excited to be in conversation, continuing our conversation with you.
Yes, and it's so good to have you. And so, everyone has heard your background, and it is just stellar. But just would love to kind of pull back and talk about what is a day in the life of Tonya Ladipo, the CEO, the founder of the Ladipo Group. Please share. Would love to know.
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, I just to have to be honest to share, I have 2 children, so it starts with them. I have twin girls who are 16, and I think because I can feel them leaving soon for college, I still drive them to school because it's a little bit of time I get with them. So the day starts with making sure they're ready, and what I've really done in the past couple of years that has been helpful for me as a CEO is the beginning of the day, I focus on getting them out, and then I come home, and because I work from home, and then I get ready for my day. And so I have really carved out like the first 90 minutes to do what I need to do, which often includes some yoga, possibly a walk, depending on how cold it is. Otherwise, I wait till later in the day. Making myself breakfast, listening to some music. Like I have really been intentional about easing into the day. And I've been more intentional, I would say, probably the past few months, even more so, because once you open your email, the day is no longer yours.
Right.
And so I really tried to kind of carve out some morning time for myself. And then you open the email, you go to our system, and then what fires need to be put out, who needs what.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm prepping for a presentation, so I'll do that. Maybe I'm actually giving the presentation, meeting with my
Mhm.
leadership team, and then there's the day.
Wow, it's you said something, and so you are definitely an entrepreneur at heart. But I remember when my kids were little, and I say little when they were school age, when they were home, just put that when they were
Hmm.
home. Um, but I realized very early, like people say, why you get up so early? I said, because as soon as one of their feet hits the ground, the day no longer belongs to me. Like it no longer belongs to me. It just
It's
it's
true.
something, it's wheels in motion, right? And so the fact that you do have, sort of some control over your schedule. I love the coming back home and then resetting.
Hmm.
To me, that's a type of unplugging within itself. Like you've
Yes.
created this routine that, okay, I've got this piece of my life dealt with, getting the girls to school, and now I've got to come back and get recentered. And
Hmm.
so, this podcast is talking a lot about how to unplug, and it's not these massive unplugging, but that you can do, like taking a month off or 6 months off or something like that, but literally in your day. So
Yes.
I love, love, love that piece. It feels like, does it give you almost like a restart to your
It
day? Like,
does.
and
It
yeah,
does.
yeah.
Um, a restart in like a refocus on me, right?
Hmm.
So I've been mom for a little bit in the morning.
Hmm.
Um, I'm about to go be, CEO leader. So in between that,
Hmm.
I just need to be Tonya. I just need to I love fresh fruit. I just need
Hmm.
to eat some fresh fruit, and I love like aesthetics are important to me. So I have these cute little teal bowls or orange bowls that I'll put my fruit in, and I'll sit and have my fruit. Like it's really simple, but it is like these really simple joys
Hmm.
that previously in my life I would dismiss or not make time for or say it wasn't important and realize but I like it, so it is important. And it's this tiny
Absolutely.
little thing that makes my life better, so why would I deny that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I will tell you, for me, when I think about in the mornings, very similar to you, now since the kids are grown and I am it's just me, I have this thing about coffee mugs. So I have coffee mugs that have a saying on them, like, like embrace the journey, or and so every morning I get up and decide which coffee mug I
I
want
love
to
that.
grab to make my coffee as I sit and do my devotion or my meditation
Hmm.
or just read a magazine. Like that is my escape as the sun comes up.
Hmm.
And so just finding those little things. But with that, as I use that as an example, I think about the whole balancing leadership and well-being. How do you navigate like all the responsibilities of leadership and ensure that your own emotional well-being is intact? Like how do you do that?
I think I'm going to go back a few years actually because something that I find to be helpful when I'm listening to others talk is sometimes you just hear the pretty story. You see the after, but you
Right.
don't hear the hard part of it.
Hmm.
And so to be able to answer how I balance it, I do want to go back to how hard it was to
Yeah.
create what is balance for me. And
Hmm.
so I go back to actually the beginning of the pandemic was
Hmm.
so stressful. I remember coming home and telling my husband at the time that like I felt like I couldn't I felt like my brain was going to come out of my head
Hmm.
because it was always thinking, strategizing, how am I going to figure it out? And I remember thinking, I can't have a stroke. Like I cannot have a stroke. I
Wow.
have two daughters. I
Hmm.
have a business, but the way I'm moving, like this isn't going to be okay. And
Hmm.
so what I did um, was I committed to walking every day. I've always loved walking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I made a commitment every day. Rain, shine, sleet, snow, I was going to walk every day. And so I did. And so that was like my first commitment to myself to
Wow.
take care of my mental well-being,
Mm-hmm.
um, was I was going to walk every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I ended up doing this with a friend. We would meet once a week, and we would, because we were social distancing at the time, right? So we would meet
Right, right,
outside
right,
and we would
right, right,
walk.
right. Mm-hmm.
And so that, though it's been 5 years, so I walk every day, is how I take care of my mental well-being. Even my girls will know, I might be working later in the day. They'll come home, they'll want to chat, and sometimes I'll say, I want to hear what you have to say, but I have to go take a walk.
Right.
And they'll say, okay, we'll talk to you when you get back. Because they know, like,
Right.
this
That's
is
just sacred
how
time. Yeah.
I need to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So how I do the balance is, for me, it is walking, it is getting the fresh air, the sunshine, the literal grounding with my feet on the ground reminds me of what I need to focus on in the moment, which when I'm sitting at my desk can sometimes get muddled. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
that to me is like my biggest strategy, I would say, for kind of keeping my mental wellness as I'm trying to balance it all. And
Mm-hmm.
then in recent years, um, I've gotten clearer about who to go to for what,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Who do I go to because I need somebody to tell me I'm the best because I'm
Right.
not feeling it today?
Right.
Who to go to because I kind of need a kick in the pants and you got to like just tell me the real deal, like, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and so knowing who my tribe.
Yeah. And it's, I say, and this podcast is for everyone. But if I could just lean into women for just a minute, I always say, as we go through seasons of life, you have to really stare down that circle. You have to really focus in on the who to help you deal with your what,
Yes.
and you really do. And you said a couple of other things. I remember when my youngest son was in the fourth grade and I got really sick. I was a single mom. The oldest had gone to college and I was really, really sick. And I remember him coming in my room one day and saying, Mom, if something happens to you, what will happen to me?
Mm,
And literally, I remember just looking at him with this, and he was very serious, which means that he had really thought about this thing. Like, it's me and my mom, and like, if she doesn't get better, what's going to happen?
yeah.
And so I share that because you do, again, hit these walls in life, and you're like, something jolts you, and you go, okay, I've got to figure this out because it's not just about me.
Yes.
It is about, in my situation, and I'm sure with yours, it's about my kids.
Yeah.
Like, and so and then something literally just shifted in me. And I was like, I've got to get this thing together.
Yeah.
I've got to, Kelley, get it together. Right. And I have one friend that tells me all the time, Kelley, get it together. You need to get yourself together. And so that was, and for people who are close to me, and as I go through this podcast, they'll learn more and more about my story. But it was again one of those areas of my personal life that had taken a hit,
Mm-hmm.
and but that time I was forced to go on medical leave. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
take the time to go on leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to change some things about myself,
Mm-hmm.
and incorporate some of those rituals. Eating right, walking, getting out, and then just being mindful of what gets into you, not just with your food, either medication, but also the people around you, what gets
Yes.
into your spirit.
Yes.
And like I said, everyone can't speak life. They just, And people, some people, they like you when you're down because that's their world.
Mm-hmm.
And you become more and more wise and mindful of that as you go through these experiences,
Very
more
true.
specifically the dark experiences.
You know, yes.
Mhm.
The dark experiences are where the richest lessons are learned, right?
Absolutely.
You think of the earth and the darkness of soil, and the coolness of it and being covered by it and in the middle of it. It doesn't, for me, it feels
No.
horrible, horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like what comes from it, right? The lessons I've learned, um, being able to see patterns that I have participated in, right?
That's right.
That don't serve me, um, and even cause harm are lessons that happen in the dark.
They do. They do. And you think about boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. And I know, I'm not sure if we're getting some echo, some feedback here, but I think they're going to cancel it out for us. There it goes. There you go. The modern technology, I love it. But let's talk about boundaries.
Boundaries. Ooh,
Yeah.
boundaries. You know, people often talk about boundaries like something the other person has to do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that way too for a long time. Until I realized it's actually the boundaries I have for myself, and then making decisions accordingly. The boundaries of what I will tolerate, what I will accept, what I deserve. Um, and, you know, I think with age, and I don't know, I mean, I think the part about age is, you know, as you get older, like you just get tired. Like you just get tired, right? You just get tired of, like, you wake up one day, you're like, wait, I've been dealing with this for a long time.
That's right.
And for myself, I've learned this. I always thought I was a realist, but really I'm an optimist. And I am a gracious person. It's just part of me, and I like that about me. However, I did it often without discernment of who was deserving of my
That's
my
right.
graciousness,
That's right.
and ignoring reality because I wanted to be optimistic, and doing that in my personal life and in work. You know, like being so understanding of the other person's going through a hard time, and that's why this is happening. And I think, you know, there's truth to that, and at the same time having to set different boundaries for myself to say, you know what, they may be going through a hard time, and this is what I am expecting and deserving of in my personal life. This is what I am expecting and deserving of in my business, because as the CEO, the exchange is, you know, you get your paycheck, you get your job, so in turn I need you to do what's coming with that. And so for me, once I was clearer on not wanting to betray myself anymore, I was able to set different boundaries. And that was probably one of the most painful experiences, I'd say, in the past few years, honestly, because, and I don't know how, I don't think this is universal necessarily. This might just be, I think this is Tonya. Tonya, I have a long runway. Like, I take a lot. And I take time to think about things. By the time I made my decision, then I want it to have happened yesterday, right? And so the hard part was realizing, like, how long it took me to put boundaries in place that were good for me. But that changes, like, that's that impacts everybody else around me, right?
Did
They
it
might
did.
not be on board with what I am deciding is I'm deserving of and is good for me, is good for my business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so
Mm-hmm.
like that gets really sticky and conflictual. And the process of going through that, which means, relationships end, personally, professionally, things shift.
Yeah.
Um, which so when you think about boundaries, I know that's a bigger, I think, answer,
Yeah.
um, but it's how I've been thinking about them.
You know, you made me think of, and I hadn't really thought about this before, but to your point, you get older, you wake up one day, you're like, wait a minute, like, keep going around the same tree,
Right.
and it's not moving. So I need to do something different.
Right.
Um, However, I think what I'm learning to that point is clarity brings boundaries. Like when you're clear on what you need to be your true self,
Yes. Yes.
that helps inform who you need around you and um, what you deal with and what you don't.
You're absolutely right.
We do have options. People think we don't have options. You have options to, and I tell people all the time. I had a conversation with a friend over the holidays. I was like, I'm just trying to decide what bucket, and I was very authentic. Do I put you in?
Hmm.
Are we just like associates or someone that I know, or are we friends?
Mm-hmm.
Because friends to me is a very strong word in
Yes.
this season of my life
Mm-hmm.
because I need friends where we have a system of reciprocity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I
Like,
do.
I can listen to you all day, but there are times I'm going to text you and be like, I need to talk to you. It's all about me right now.
Yep.
Like, and I need you to listen and I need you to tell me, help me to see what I can't see.
Yes. Yes.
I need, this is what this conversation is going to be when I talk to you today. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And so if I can't be that with someone, then I decide how much time I spend with you
Agreed.
and how much time I give you on the phone because
Yes.
my time is precious
Yes.
and I
Yep.
have options. But I didn't do that before. I was such the receiver. People always call me with their problems. Can you help me do this? And I was gracious. Yeah, sure, sure. And I realizing like I'm struggling too.
Yeah.
Like
I need
and
somebody to
so
listen to me too.
right. I need somebody to listen to me too and it not be about you this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And so and so that's like recent over the past 18, 24 months for me. That hasn't but I realize like and you see this when people talk about who's in your inner circle
Mm-hmm.
and then who's just on the outer
Mm-hmm.
and you just reposition people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I will reposition you like with the quickness. Like, it's like, okay,
Yes.
I see now. And people change and they evolve, and that's okay because I'm clear with what I need. And it's a form of selfishness, but it's also a form of self-preservation,
I agree. I
right?
agree to me that I think it's self-preservation. I think it's actually self-care. I
Hmm.
actually don't think it's selfish. I think it is a good way to take care of yourself and honor the relationship that it is, right? Like
Right.
when things change, if you realize that we're no longer aligned, then it's time to change the relationship,
It
right?
is.
You
It
know?
is.
And if
It
it's
is.
not reciprocal and that is something that you now require, and I'm speaking for myself too,
Hmm.
then it doesn't mean overnight you cut people off. You right, you have
Right.
conversations, and this could be in professional or personally. You have
Absolutely.
conversations about it, like you try to get it so that you can compromise. And when
Hmm.
you can, that is beautiful. But when you can't, then how can you part um, with as much integrity as possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And literally you've made a personal decision in some cases and other times it's business. It's a business
True.
decision, right?
True.
And like you said, it's okay. And I think as leaders, when you have that definition in your life, it makes life so much easier. It makes decision making so much easier. It makes how you spend your time and who you spend your time with so much easier. You know, it's some situations and people you talk to, you leave totally drained. I mean, you're like done. All you can do is
Yes.
go home and go to bed.
Yes.
Like that is, and some of those things you have to deal with in your life. So you have no choice.
Hmm.
So, but the ones you do have a choice, like
Hmm.
I'm not going to do this and then have to come home and have to like
Right.
figure this out
Do it
too,
again.
right? In my
Right.
personal circle, like
Right.
when do I get a reprieve, right?
Exactly.
And so, and it's okay. And I think knowing and saying to people, it is okay to have boundaries. It is okay to, but I would say in order to establish boundaries, you've got to be clear about what brings you peace, what brings you joy, not all the time happiness, but what is it that will bring you a sense of centering? And then when you figure that out, the people around you, it'll be easy to peel
Yeah,
off people.
it's true.
You
No,
know
you're
what I
right.
mean?
No, I know you said this earlier. The point about having clarity makes having boundaries easier, right? When you're absolutely right.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes what I have found is I'm better about it now because I've been burned enough. I don't want the same lesson anymore.
Right.
Um, is is listening, right? Like sometimes sometimes the answer is there, but I don't like it.
We
And
don't like
so
it.
I ignore it because I like this person, I want to make this work. Um, and then it gets worse. It gets worse, right? Whether it's personally, like the resentments grow, whether it's professionally, the resentments grow.
Right.
Um, Instead of like really sitting with, and that's where for me, like the walking comes in. And you mentioned earlier, like quiet time. I think sometimes that's why people avoid quiet time, actually, because you don't
It
necessarily
forces, yes.
want to hear what you might hear.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think at this phase in my life, I want new lessons. I don't
Hmm.
want the same ones. And so I am listening and I am like responding, right, and making different decisions, which
Hmm.
doesn't mean it always feels good.
Right.
Um, but it ultimately gets me to it's in line with what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then as a leader, especially, and it's not everyone says, anyone can be quote unquote lonely, but there's people, I was talking to another leader and he said, I don't buy into the fact that it's lonely at the top, or he said, I would say that it's more, I think the word he used is more around just, it's more solitude at the top than there is loneliness. He said, because I choose to be in solitude at times to get my centering, and in
Mm-hmm.
that I have to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and understanding that there's a difference in being alone and being lonely.
True. True.
And as leaders, we have to find the time to be alone in solitude, to sometimes hear the things in your mind, to think about what you're thinking about. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I am, as they say, I am a witness that if you take the time, and that's the hard part, that's the hard part
Mm-hmm.
that drives the heart part. But the hard part is learning to get in solitude to figure out your clarity and your
Yes.
boundaries. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
I do.
And it's not there all the time, and you bring other people in, but
Mhm.
in my case, I bring other people in, I talk about it, but then I have to go process it
Exactly.
somewhere.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
I have to carve out the time to process.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you, I want to be open. And I think I shared with you in the other podcast that I don't want to carry bitterness. I don't want to carry resentment because it doesn't allow me to be my best.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
allow the space, the chamber in my heart
Mm-hmm.
that brings the best out of me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't want that, but I'm becoming clearer about, or more clear about, um, finding that time to process that, and placing situations and people in certain boxes. Like I'm learning to
Yes,
do that. And it's a process
it is.
because to your point, you had to go through some things to realize it. And my desire for this podcast around unplugging is that I'm learning that leaders are coming about faster. We have a generation
Mm.
of baby boomers that are looking to exit. We have Generation X, which is our generation
Mhm.
that's small, and we can't cover the
Right.
leadership spectrum. It's not enough of us.
Right.
And
Right.
then you have these millennials on your heels
Uh-huh.
that are having to jump into leadership quickly. And so I have on my team, I had like 3 people I promoted and realized they had never had the hard skills of leadership yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm hoping that as I interview seasoned leaders and leaders that are kind of new to the game, that people understand that these are things that are non-negotiable, right?
Yes.
In order to unplug. And
Yes.
so you talk about your philosophy, knowledge is good, behavior is better.
Mm-hmm.
Would love as we begin to close, like for you to unpack that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because it feels like it fits right here.
No, I think yeah. So for me, and I am an introspective person and I like reading, and so the idea that we can learn
Hmm.
how to change is the best starting point. But sometimes we can get stuck in it. We can get stuck in the thinking about
Hmm.
what we want to do,
Hmm.
right? Or
Hmm.
even the talking about what we
Hmm.
want to do.
Hmm.
But are we actually taking the actions that are needed to make the changes that we want to make, right? And so we might talk about the kind of relationships we want to have. We
Right.
might want to talk about the kind of businesses we want to run. But are we talking or are we doing?
Hmm.
Because when it comes to doing, it means we're going to have to make some hard choices, especially as leaders. As
Hmm.
leaders, you are going to have to decide who stays with you in this next phase and who doesn't.
That's
You're
right.
going to have to decide which clients you take and which ones you don't, right? Not all
Hmm.
money is good money,
That's right.
right? You want to make sure you're aligned with the work that you're doing. Um, you might have people on your team who disagree with you, and there are some disagreements as a CEO that cultivate. You want this disagreement; it's going to make the work better. But
Hmm.
then, are you disagreeing with like our values? That might be. Then this might not be the right place, right?
Absolutely.
And same personally, like, do we want this relation? Like you were given earlier, what bucket am I putting you in? Are we associates or are we friends? Because
Right.
if we're friends, this is the expectation I will have for myself
Expectations.
and for you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
we can't just rely on our knowledge and our thoughts to do what we were called to do, right?
Right. 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 You're right. It's like you have to have a plan,
Yes,
you know? Plan your work your plan. It's the same thing. Because I tell you this, if you don't have a plan, someone will find a plan for you
that's
and you'll
true.
be working their plan.
This is very, this is very
It's,
true.
and I've learned that over the years as well.
Likewise.
Um, and so, as we unplug and think about unplugging, I mean, it's just so many nuggets here, just about the boundaries, about clarity, about defining who can speak into your life and who
Mm-hmm.
can't,
Mm-hmm.
and at what time. Um, the unplugging brings the opportunity to think about the big rocks that
Yes.
form your
Yes.
life,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That form your life.
Yeah.
And I still have so much to give. as I move into, the next phase of my life, I want it to be all about, um, you know, giving back. I want to be able to transfer knowledge. And I love working with college students. I love working with new leaders. I love learning from existing leaders. And as we try to make this walk together, I am very intentional now about focusing on my personal life. I want a life outside of what I just described.
I like that.
And that starts with me.
Yes.
As I think about a next project, like I'm my next project.
Oh,
I'm
I
my
love
next
that, Kelley.
project. I am my next project. I have so many things I want to do to continue to figure out who I am.
I love that.
In order to do that, I have to unplug because I am a very different woman at now 56 than I was at 50, at 45, at 40.
Hmm. Hmm.
And through life experiences and changes, I'm having to now once again redefine
Yeah,
or maybe fine tune like
I
what's
like that.
next
I
and
like that.
who I am in that next.
Hmm.
And so I'm excited about it. At first, 6 months ago, I was totally nervous, flabbergasted, like just what? Wait, I had a
Right.
plan.
Right. Why do I have to redo this? This was supposed to
Right.
be
Like
done.
so tired of beginning again.
Yes,
However, that's life and
that
that's
is.
the life cycle.
That
And
is.
so you either embrace it or if you don't, the bitterness will set in. And I
Agree.
just cannot do the bitterness and I can't do the resentment and I can't do the tension. And the last thing I'll say, and I think we both, this kind of was like a thread through our conversation, is I have people ask me as a leader, like, I've seen your career, I've seen your trajectory. What makes you move on? What makes you go to
Mm,
that next opportunity? And so, I know the call on my life is to help and to build and to transform lives. And because I'm so clear about that, it hasn't been often, but there have been a couple of times in my career when the purpose and the integrity on the other side didn't
mm,
begin
mhm,
to misalign
mhm.
with what I knew I was brought in to do or called to do. And so when that is compromised, that's a wake up call for me to say,
Yeah.
okay, the assignment is over here.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
you have to go back. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I became very clear in that. And so I've got to work on that same clarity in other areas of my
Oh, I
life.
like that.
And so when I say I'm going to work on me, the whole unplugging is to figure out how do I create a world where I can continue to do good as
Hmm.
long as I want to do good,
Hmm. Hmm.
and be healthy doing it.
I like that.
And I say good, I'll always do good, but want to continue to do the assignments that I've been called to do with such passion. And so unplugging is doing that. And so, Tanya, this has been wonderful. And I always like to end my podcast with my hope, and we share our hope for each other. And so this time I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And I would say, Tanya, my hope for you is that your message touches all corners of the world
Mm.
sooner rather than later. We are in such a tipping point in society that people are going to have to personally decide
Yes.
what's next for them.
Hmm.
And in their decision making, it affects what's next for a lot of other people within their sphere of influence.
Hmm.
And so my hope is that you continue to bring that message around knowledge is good, behavior is better, and that you're able to get it into the hearts and the minds of people that really need to hear it, and not just hear it, but to move on it. And so that's my hope for you. And I see that happening and I'm excited about what I see.
Ooh, I received that. Thank you. Thank you,
Hmm.
Kelley.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
My hope for you is that you experience joy as you are refining Kelley at 56.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I receive that. I feel it. And people around me, it's amazing that when you make a declaration, and I would say, some people say the universe, but I would say, as God takes what you've put out there as well as what He's put into you, He starts aligning people that will help you with that. And just very quick before we go, my deputy assistant, Mercedes Fuller, was just amazing. Everyone around me who's really close to me know I'm a huge Anthony Hamilton fan.
Mm,
So I was surprised with tickets, and I was thinking let me tell you, part of my vision and travel for the year was to figure out where Anthony Hamilton was going to be
I
this
love
year.
that.
So I was like, he's going to be in North Charleston, he's going to be in Orlando. Well, when you start telling people stuff, like things start coming to you. So
I love that.
found out recently he was going to be down the street from where I live at a university. And my assistant, my
I
deputy
love
assistant,
that.
the night before he texts me, he calls me boss lady, boss lady. I need for you to check outside your door. I have a report out there for you. And I was like, it's Thursday, like it's the weekend, right? And so I opened it and I looked at it, and it was 2 tickets to see Anthony Hamilton. Listen, let me tell you. And so that was one of my unplugging for the
I
weekend.
love that.
I absolutely, but I use as an example to say that your hope for me is already coming to life. That
Good.
I'm leaning into the things that I want to do and that I enjoy doing, and I know that it will just bring those people to me, and people that are aligned with purpose with me.
Yes.
And I hope that other leaders that are listening to this begin to understand that unplugging can, and speaking what you want to do, like it really can come to pass if you're really sincere about it
True.
and you surround yourself with the right people and the right mindsets. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
Tanya, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this inaugural season of Life and Leadership Unplugged. And I'm sure we will have many more conversations
I
for,
look
for
forward to
years
it,
to come.
Kelley. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In today's two-part conversation, we delved into the core motivations behind Life and Leadership Unplugged and uncovered the transformative power of authentic storytelling. Tanya's insights into the importance of healthy routines, clear boundaries, and translating knowledge into behavior remind us that sustainable leadership begins with genuine self-care. May this dialogue inspire us all to embrace both our message and our personal well being, as well as our purpose, as we move forward into new opportunities and challenges. That is my keepsake for this week.